Good evening, everybody. You're watching the Sam Coleman podcast. We got a terrific show for you all tonight. I hope you have popcorn. I hope you have ice cream. Don't touch my ice cream, though. I know you're thinking about it, but don't touch whatever you do. Our featured story is the GOP fragments is war resolution passed. Now, that's a lot of work. But Tuesday, the War Resolution Act passed 50-48. Now, Trump had a meeting with his GOP, with his buddies behind closed doors. Here's what happened. I want you to follow the bouncy ball because it bounces twice. Tuesday, war resolution clears both chambers. First time in American history, I know. President to pull forces out of the Iran conflict unless Congress says otherwise. Four Republicans cross over, Cassidy, Collins, Paul, and Merkowitsky in this closed-door meeting. The only Democrat that votes no is John Fetterman. Contrarians for sport at this point. So the headline writes itself. GOP cracks, bipartisan rebuke, historic vote. Except, stay with me, the resolution doesn't actually do anything. Look, it's non-binding. It doesn't go to the president's desk. It carries the legal weight, sure, of a strongly worded group chat. Trump naturally takes this about as well as you'd expect. Look, he goes on Truth Social. He goes Tuesday night. Calls them loser, says the Senate just gave Iran aid and comfort. You know, it's classic restraint. Wednesday, Senate Steering Committee, lunch. Trump and Cassidy get into it. Reportedly, Trump calls him a lunatic, right? And the media kind of latches on to this. Cassidy was interviewed, and I believe him on this one, says he was just asking why a war that was supposed to take 4 weeks is now 4 months. And then he said, oh, I have a duty to the American people. It's very reasonable. Got him called a lunatic at lunch. That night, Wednesday night, the second vote, different resolution, some basic idea led by Tim Kaine fails 47-50. And guess who flips back? Cassidy. Same man, 24 hours, opposite vote after a same-day briefing from J.D. Vance and Steve Witkoff. You know, funny how that works. You get yelled at Wednesday morning, briefed Wednesday afternoon, and by Wednesday night, you found your spine and retracted back to your spine. Now, and I want to be fair here because precision matters. The second vote didn't undo the first, that they're different resolutions. The original 50-48 is still on the books. The second vote just blocked a separate measure. Trump's victory lap framing isn't as 40-50-48 against now it's 50-47-4. It's conflating two different things. Some senators, same pressure campaign, opposite outcome in a different day. That's part real. A literal reversal. That's part spin. But here's my actual point. It's not about Cassidy. Cassidy's a doctor. He got cornered. He said he was a doctor. He's a doctor. He'll be a doctor. Who cares? 3 wars are happening right now. And only one of them has soldiers in it. War number 1, Iran. Still going. This memorandum of understanding has been signed. Ceasefire talks continue. It's a load of BS. Switzerland as we speak. And yet, June 26, Iran fires on a shipping vessel in the Strait of Hormuz. And U.S. Central Command responds with strikes against Iran after the memorandum was signed. If it was a suggestion, if we signed a deal, it means we'll circle back to that. War number 2. Look, Ukraine, we probably didn't consider this, still grinding. Nobody talking about it this week because it's been upstaged, and that should tell you something about how this whole apparatus works. Wars don't end. They get rotated out of the news cycle like a TV show that's lost ratings. War number 3. Look, this is the one I actually want to talk about. It's the media war. And I don't mean the media is biased. I mean, both parties have entered into a sparring match. Truth Social, look at X. Look at the video on Kimmel, where the entire point is the fight, not the outcome. J.D. Vance compares Trump to Nixon on television. Within the day, the story isn't the comparison. Look, it's an attack on his wife, yeah. And then there are tweets. And then Mark Levin calls Piers Morgan a Nazi. Tucker Carlson then tells Piers that the U.S. spent multiples more defending Israel than Israel defending itself, and goes after Netanyahu directly. Says the only way BD stays in power is by staying at war. Says it's personal upside for him. Says Israel's getting less popular by the week. And now, here's the part that should bother you more than any of these individual fights. Look, Massey, Cruz, Cassie, Paul Rand, these are the names cheered right now by the sidelines. Last honest men in the GOP. The Monicas, the one who will say the war ran too long, who will call leadership unchristian, out of touch. And maybe there's some sincerity. I'm not saying there isn't. But watch what happens after they say it. Nothing. The war doesn't end. The legislation doesn't move. The rebellion produces a non-binding resolution in a lunch fight between Cassidy and Trump, between Massey, between Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene. You get the appearance of dissent and the persistence of the status quo packaged together so neatly. I have to ask, who actually benefits from a controlled burn that never spreads? Because here's the arithmetic nobody's on either side wants to run. If the Iran war actually ended cleanly, finally, no more strikes on a shipping vessel. 3 days after a signed deal, a big chunk of the current political theater loses its engine. The base doesn't need a villain aboard. If there's nothing left aboard to be villainous. Look, same logic. Look at Water. Look at Nixon. He ran to Vietnam when things were getting hot out. Keep one fire burning over there so people don't ask too many questions about a fire over there. I'm not saying it's a conspiracy with a memo in a group chat. Look, all I'm saying is that the incentives lie up a little too conveniently for it to just be a coincidence every single time. Meanwhile, and this is where I lose my patience, the actual stuff people care about just sits there. Trump's demanding the DOJ investigate whether gas companies are sitting on high prices even after the Hormuz reopened and air traffic's back to normal. Fine, investigate. The GOP's pushing a housing bill named at Wall Street investors buying up residential property. Lennett's calling it a critical stepping stone for affordability. Also fine, investigate the gas thing, pass the housing thing. Then what? Inflation's sitting at 3.9%. Vance wants it at 2.9%. And this answer for how we got there's a lot of capital invested. Factories, manufacturing, jobs catching up is what Vance said on The View. That's not a plan, that's a weather forecast. Vance has the answer for everything. The answer is always, that's being fixed. Always, that's a hoax from the last administration. Always somewhere just past the horizon. Remember ICE that year? Troops show up, agents pour in, camera roll. A handful of people get deported from woke, liberal, progressive crowd. Then quietly everybody pulls back. The city in question is exactly as it was. Less fanfare. That's all we need to do. More improvement, more deportations, less theater. Instead, we get the opposite ratio every single time. Maximum spectacle, minimum follow-through. And don't think I'm letting the other sides. Look, crime gets reclassified out of the headlines because admitting it's a problem is politically inconvenient for the wrong zip code. Affordability gets a press conference instead of a housing supply. Education policy happens in the opens while the actual classroom stays the same. It's the same indoctrination. It's the same corruption, the same crime. And Zoran Mandani is taking over New York City. Independently or not, settle on the cheaper option. Let's talk about money. Because somebody finally sent me actual numbers instead of lies. You've heard the figure by now, $300 billion. Democrats have been waving around like Trump just cut around a personal check. Bernie Sanders did the math on television. With $300 billion, we could end homelessness, fund cancer research for 40 years, and give every child free pre-K for over 7 years. Powerful sense, built on a framing that isn't quite what's in the document. Here's what actually in the June 17th memorandum, the memorandum of understanding, word for word. The United States, quote, undertakes with regional partners to develop a definitive, mutually agreed plan with at least $300 billion for the reconstruction, the economic development of the Islamic Republic of Iran. That's not a check. That's not reparations. It's reconstruction and development fund. It's like a private investment vehicle. No U.S. taxpayer money, no government grants. More than half of what it was already privately committed before the deal was even signed. And from companies across the U.S., the Gulf states, Asia, South America, and Africa. They all signed this deal. Here's the part that actually tells you something. Because it tells you what Iran wants versus what Iran got. A senior Iranian source said Tehran originally asked for $400 billion. So they originally asked for $400 billion. They got $300 billion. That was the negotiation part. That was the consolation prize. The thing that got built after the actual task was rejected. Look, and J.D. Vance asked about point blank who's funding it, said the quiet part out loud. He said there's a great desire from the Arab world, from outside the Arab world, to actually get involved in Iran if they behave properly. This isn't generosity, it's leverage. Iran gets investment if Iran behaves. Behavior, in this context, not firing on shipping vessels 2 hours after signing the thing, the Strait of Hormuz, 70. So when Sanders says $300 billion could not end homelessness, look, he's not talking about the number. He's talking about whose number it is. That money was never on the table for pre-K in Ohio. It was never on the table for anything domestic. It was never on the table for crime, for mass deportations, for money to begin with. It's not what the government wanted to do. It's private capital chasing, reconstruction contracts in a country that hasn't been meaningful foreign investment in 4 decades because of sanctions. So you've got a headline, nobody's number, nobody's ever fighting over. Attached to a mechanism, nobody's actually finished. Negotiating, attached to a war that's still producing strikes after the signature died. That's not a scandal. That's not a giveaway. It's a half-built bridge that both parties are standing on the opposite ends of, yelling about the view. Well, nobody finishes the construction. Let's go to the States for a second. Because if you want to see what happens when someone actually gets tired of waiting on Washington, look at Texas. Operation Lone Star started in 2021, still running. Texas didn't wait for a federal fix on the border. Look, it deployed its own National Guard DBS resources, all of its resources, everything from the ground up, its own barriers, used state trespass law to make its own arrests. Whatever you think of politics, whatever you think of the state, reporting real reductions and legal crossings using its own money and its own authority. Billions of dollars. Look, that's Texas has gone back to Washington, asking for reimbursement. Somewhere in around $11 billion, citing recent statements. Now that federal authorities have apparently shifted again. And I want you to sit with that contrast for a second. Texas spent its own money solving a problem because it got tired of speeches. Meanwhile, at the federal level, ICE shows up with cameras rolling. A handful of people get walked out in front of an angry crowd, and then everybody quietly stands down. The underlying number barely moves. One of those is enforcement. The other, it's a segment. And this is exactly the split I'm coming from, back from. It's not red versus blue. Texas isn't a monoff, and neither is the federal government. Roger Wicker, Tom Cotton, Ted Cruz have all broken Trump over parts of the broader Iran agreement. The separate fight from the war powers vote entirely. The war powers vote was just like that. It's just another conflict in the media. The actual divide is between people who spend the money and do the thing, and people who hold the press accountable about the thing. So here's my actual verdict. I want to be precise about it because precision is the one thing missing from this entire conversation. We are not at Watergate. We're not there. I'm not going to sit here and tell you the sky is falling because half of what's wrong with how people experience this war is exactly the kind of overstatement for somebody amplifying a real problem into a catastrophe. Because the catastrophe gets better in game. I'm not going to do that to you. But we are watching the early shape of something that rhymes with it. A White House that treats consult first as optional. A Congress that can produce a historic vote, a meaningless one, in the same week and call both of them victories. A Reconstruction fund that's real money from real companies getting argued about as if it were a federal check by people on both sides who'd rather you stay confused than go look at the actual document. A political class that has discovered the fight is more profitable, right, than the resolution. And it's structured its entire public behavior around making sure the fight never actually resolves. This is the way out. Isn't another investigation. The way out isn't who said what on The View. That's not the way out. It's boring. It's sign the deal and mean it. No strikes, no shipping vessels 72 hours later. It's read the actual MOU before you go on television with a number. It's pick one war to actually finish before starting the next news cycle. It's fix the gas prices, the housing supply, the things that don't trend on a Tuesday but are the entire reason anyone's angry in the first place. It's the real fight in this country right now isn't conservative versus progressive. That's the wrong framework. I don't think that's even close to accurate anymore. The real fight is between the people who are actually trying to fix something and the people who figured out that fighting about it is more profitable line of work. Policymakers, policy fakers. That's the split. That's the difference. Everything else is just about the show. That's basically what it's about. It's just about creating a visage, a mirage of things. Pleasantries, fights, disagreements, shouting matches between Trump and supporters, shouting matches between a president and a senator. That's all what it's about. This isn't about getting things done. This isn't about actually defeating Iran. This isn't about cleaning up our borders, cleaning up our education systems, getting indoctrination away from our schools, fixing crime in our major cities. All Chicago's a mess. Cleveland's a mess. Detroit is kind of a mess. New York's a mess. Socialism taking over the East Coast. This isn't about kicking out socialism. This isn't about returning to normalcy. What this is about is creating a show, a spectacle, a circus, so people can make money. So people like on The View, Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro, Nick Fuentes, they can all earn a cash grab, right? Because two sides are divided and the bipartisan system supports them. Now, hold on for a second. The bipartisan system, I mean the Democrats and the Republicans. That means the Democrats. This is a hot take now, but the Democrats support Nick Fuentes because he's useful to them. He's literally a talking machine. Feeds into them. He's a puppet for their own use. They can link him to the GOP. They can link him to Trump. They can link him to the broader Republican base and socialism too. It's real in New York City, but guess what? All these reports that are going online are in fact just reports. They're just comedy. They're just meant to stir up the media. They're like, let me put it this way: the real clowns, all right, the real clowns isn't Don Rickles or Johnny Carson, or it certainly isn't any of those late night talk shows. Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, Stephen Colbert. Those guys they're beyond stupid. In fact, they're part of the problem. They're part of the establishment. The real clowns are actually the policymakers. The real comedians are the senators sitting in Congress at this very moment, prolonging this debate, prolonging this battle, prolonging this behind closed doors media argument, fist fight between Trump and Cassidy. Those are the clowns. Those are the comedians. Those are the people we actually listen and laugh to. Be honest, like, how many of us laugh at, I don't know, how many of us laugh at Colbert? How many of us think Fallon is funny or Kimmel is funny or any of those guys, right? None of us, right? We don't find them funny because their humor is dry. Their statements are obvious. They're factual. They lack irony. They lack subtlety. They're boring. Let's just admit they're boring. We don't listen to them for anything. We just listen to them because the base is Democratic. But when you pull out your phone, when you take out a show, when you look at Trump, when you look at what Trump said or what J.D. Vance said, how many of that stuff is memes? How many of the stuff people think is funny? Or fights in between congressional senators session. Bernie Sanders collapsing on the Senate floor. People think that's funny. They don't think whatever Fallon said about his vocal coaching is funny. It's factual. It's whatever. The style is shifting. The climate is changing. The era is shifting away from comedy. Obviously, it's shifting away towards political sections and filibustering and Senate votes that get overturned and pseudo policymakers who honestly just want like media attention. Think of John Fetterman. Why did he change his vote? Didn't he just look at media? I feel like Thomas Massey too. He could fall into that category. They think he's a fighter, a populist, somebody who's, for the interests of the base and against Trump's tyranny, right? He called Trump a monarch, a king. Massey was on Tucker Carlson. Massey was talking with Tucker about these conspiracy theories that weren't even true. Some of them was true about his wife, about what Trump said about his wife. But Massey was indulging Tucker Carlson. He wants the attention. He wants to be seen on TV, on a camera, in somebody. Tucker Carlson, he wants the attention. He wants the clout. He wants laughs. He wants something to happen. He doesn't want to stay in the background. He's not going to retire. He was just defeated. Massey ran again, and obviously the Israel-backed establishment, the Israel lobby, which with the Trump base, the Trump's GOP defeated it. And he didn't disappear after that. He's on Tucker Carlson. What do you know? Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's posting. She keeps posting. She's on social posting, saying it's the war in Iran is unchristian. Trump's actions are unbefitting a Christian, and that he is literally saying that she's flouting this. It's clear she's flouting this on True Social, on X, on social media, because she wants the attention, she wants the clout, she wants the appearance. Moreover, it's the battle. Like I said, it's the media war that they want to create, the bipartisan system. Republicans, República, Democrats. They both want to create the same thing because they're not interested in change. They're not interested in cleaning up crime and mass deportations, in fixing our criminal justice system. You know, in most of our cities, criminals are just let out into the streets. They don't care about fixing that. They don't care about, you know, creating penitentiaries and safe neighborhoods and affordable housing. These are just talking points, purely talking points. And you voted for this in 2024. You voted for all of this. So you trusted these people. You trusted all of it. I'm not going to go with the typical argument. The politicians are all liars. That's not true. That hasn't always been true. It's been true for a while, though. It's been true for a good extent. And it's because they're not action takers. They're debaters and comedians and clowns, right and left. Ben Shapiro, Mark Levin, AOC, they're all part of the Saj. Zoran Mamdani, the only guy who might have a chance, who seems like he wants to do something about any of this, is Vivek Ramaswamy. All right, I know that's a hot take. That's a clip. Okay, he's an outsider. He's a ghost gooper anchor baby from India. Ramaswamy wants to actually tackle fraud, crime, education, wants to make it all happen. Similar kind of to Spencer Pratt. And Spencer Pratt's something else, but I feel like, but he had a problem. He saw a problem. He saw trash. He saw houses burning down in LA. He saw fires erupting across the city. His own burned down, and he wanted to fix it. He wanted to jump in the rain and do something about it. You see, they don't want to do something. The policymakers, the so-called policymakers, don't want to do something. Trump doesn't want to do something about it. He wants to make deals happen. And he can't even make deals happen. He signs a deal and it disappears right around the corner. Just this endless cycle of, oh, we got this new deal we're gonna sign. It's gonna be beautiful. I have absolute faith in this new deal. It's a deal where it's pushed ICE out. Why did ICE come in and why did you push them out? Why didn't you actually deport your posters? You know, it was 200,000 that they actually deported, according to Cash Patel, according to the FBI. Somewhere around 200,000, when it was supposed to be a lot more than that. They massively, they cocked at this. They pussied out. They got their tails in between their legs and they went the other way. Sorry, but that's what you got. That's mediocre action. I know a lot of you voted for Trump because you cleaned the violent criminals off your streets, off your transit systems, cleaned off the Zarutska killers off the bus stations, get those rapists out, put them wherever they came from. I know a lot of you voted for that, but we're not getting a lot. In fact, we're getting maybe a fifth of it. 200,000, like I said, that's the figure. But we gotta wait to see for something real to happen. For something real to happen, we need somebody who's committed to take action against this two-party system. We need a non-affiliate, a non-party member to step up. We need somebody who's outside the system, somebody like Vivek Ramaswamy. He's not a waspocratic American. He comes from India. He's insanely sharp. He's tackled these issues before. You could say he's an idealist. He did leave his billion-dollar company. We'll see what happens. He's committed. We'll see if he gets things done. I'm looking into Vivek's story. We'll be tracking his story over this podcast, but it'll be interesting to see where he goes. And but enough of this stalling. Enough of these antics. Oh, you didn't vote for the war resolutions. You're a lunatic. What is this? Come on, we're all watching, guys. Come on, we know what this is about. We know you started a war, you can't finish the war, and we know that because gas prices are up. Despite what you're saying about this deal. Now you're faking this angry shouting match, pretend civil war, pretending there's a civil war between Bill Cassidy and Donald Trump, between two red pill old dudes, one old loyalist senator and an angry tyrannical president who shakes his fist. What is this? The Wars of the Roses? Are we going to have the battle of town again? Are we going to have another revolutionary war? Come on, what is this? Like, it's show, it's comedy. Come on. If only we got to see the meeting firsthand. We only got like journalistic interviews, what Cassidy said, and brief interviews. We didn't get anything real. No, maybe a couple Democrats were watching or like listening in, but it was a closed door meeting. So we do know that Jamie Vance and another senator went up to Cassidy to him otherwise. So in the end, he switched his vote. And Yeah, it's 47 to 50. Wow, voila, what's the change? What's changing? Are gas prices down? No, they're still high up, way up. And you all are paying $4.55. I paid $5. I live here in Rockford, Illinois. It sounds like I live somewhere else, but I live in Rockford, Illinois. I pay a lot of money for gas. I really want it to go down. For it to do that is for this goddamn war to just stop. This full on conflict, this proxy war, this Israel first war against Iran to stop. It's got to stop. It's got to stop so the economy can settle, so we can more importantly focus on what's here in front of us. I care about our education system. I think it's being corrupted by agendists, fake teachers, these woke liberal progressives who want to teach something that's not on the agenda, has nothing to do with economics, history, math, anything, science. They ain't talking about science. They're talking about cutting off the genitalia. That's a reality of our education system. And we need to kick these people out. We need to remove them. Same with the immigrants. Same with the thug who brutally raped, murdered, and dismembered Agnieszka Zarutska. Same with that Sikh radical Indian who butchered Henry Novak. Sickening what's happening. That was in England. But think about it. Historically, whatever happens in England is bound to happen here, right? The Enlightenment started in England and then it shifted over to America. Think of the coffee house culture in the 18th century, the 17th and 18th centuries. It spread from England to America. Look at that. You guys don't see a trend. You don't see how the climate is shifting for sure. Nobody cares about justice, education, citizenship, family, all important values maybe 40 or 50 years ago. What happened? Wait for next episode or about this. Subscribe, like. If you're a fan, share. Tell me what you think of the show. I'm very excited to hear your thoughts. I hope to see you soon. Don't steal my ice cream and have a wonderful night.